Well, the New South Wales Agriculture Minister has announced a $50 million package to address the state's mice plague. At least 8 stations will be established to treat grain in regional areas free of charge. The government is trying to access the strongest bait, which will kill mice within 24 hours. $500 household rebates and $1,000 small business rebates will also be available for buying baits. Joining me live for more on this is James Jackson, President of New South Wales Farmers. Before we get to the package, just delving into this, is it just the extra rain creates the extra feed and has created this issue? Have we seen something on a scale of this before?
No, not for a long time, and it is something that's sort of unprecedented, and it's partially because of the big season last year, and it's partially because of best practice management of fallows or stubbles, where we leave the stubble. We don't put sheep in it anymore. We actually leave it there for, to manage the soil surface so it doesn't blow away in a drought. So perversely, if you like, best practice management of the cereal stubbles leaves a lot of feed on the ground. You know, the crop was really big last year, a lot of it lodged. The harvester didn't pick it all up.
Right.
So there's a big body of feed there, and there continues to be a lot of feed there. These plagues really are a response to the amount of feed, and there's huge amounts still left out there.
The vision is astonishing. Sometimes I know we, are not attuned to issues in our cities of what happens out on the land, but just explain that. So the stubble, so previously crops might have been taken totally out of the ground, but now they leave a little bit in there to keep the soil there.
Yep.
That's still the best practice, is it? But this is just...
That's a recommended best practice, but the GRDC, the RDC, or the Research and Development Corporation for the grain industry, I mean, they've been doing a lot of work on making sure that soils are protected, post-harvest. And certainly with glyphosate, with some of the modern herbicides, you can actually do this without disturbing the soil. It's best practice management. But what it does do is leave quite a lot of feed on the ground. So we're anticipating this to actually happen more often. So that's why the package includes a research, angle, a long-term strategic approach. There is a here and now approach, which is needed, but we do need some new tools.
Okay, so what can happen first here and now? How can this be?
Well, we can poison the animals, and we can poison them in a best practice fashion. Essentially. So the package has got workshops, essentially, to teach people exactly how to use the bait most effectively, because the bait, they're useful, but unfortunately, if there's a lot of feed around, the baits, the mice don't take the baits. So you've got to use them in a strategic sense. So pre-sowing, that sort of situation, you can use them, but in a maturing crop where there's other feed, very, very difficult to use them. So we need new tools. I mean, we need a biocontrol, or we need some new baiting technologies, if you like.
So when you say biocontrol, what do you mean by that?
Oh, well, a pox virus or something that actually interferes with the breeding
Like
cycle.
what happened with Khaleesi for rabbits, for example, so something that wipes them out.
This herpes virus for the carp, that they haven't released yet. Those sort of biocontrols, long-term strategic approach to, pests. I think, those biocontrols are seen as pretty key, and now with new genomic technologies and whatnot, you can actually develop these a lot.
So if leaving stubble in the ground was always a possibility to lead to increased mice, why wasn't this looked at before? I mean, was there a lack of foresight?
Yeah, look, it has been looked at before, and mouse plagues have been... It's interesting, I've learned a bit about mice since this plague started. So mice issues are big at the south of the state. They usually have a problem.
Right.
And, I was talking to rice growers. It's interfered with the rice harvest. It's destroyed some of the sorghum harvest up north. Further north in the state, though, it's something that we only see intermittently, but they're telling us it's going to happen more often. So we do need some research. We have had these tools for some time, but they are only useful in certain circumstances. So we need new tools.
Is there much debate around there about, a so-called humanitarian approach? People want to get rid of these mice. Whether there are tactics that wouldn't necessarily be seen as the I don't know, the most, you know,
Oh, well-
gentle approach versus we've got to get rid of these, we need to be brutal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, that's one thing about looking at rodenticides. I mean, you look at the humaneness of the death. So those sort of things are looked at. You know, when we select herbicides,
Right.
pesticides, and application techniques. You know, the way we apply it to make sure that we attract the animals. I mean, there are other technologies.
Bait we were talking about earlier, you know, it kills them in 24 hours. Is it the more effective it is, the less kind it is on mice usually?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, the clotting, the ones that work on the clotting system, people say, well, it takes them 24 hours to die. But what sort of death is sort of internal bleeding, which sounds terrible, but they sort of go to sleep. They lose consciousness,
right,
and drop off. So it's not, although it takes quite a lot of time to kill them, it's not necessarily inhumane. You know, it's not. There's not a lot of pain involved. You know, they just lose consciousness because they're losing. They're bleeding internally, essentially.
So, and the package today also, there's some grants, if you like, to small businesses. People with B&Bs in particular. No one's going to stay there, are they? I mean, these mice are everywhere.
They're terrible, and it's sort of working on people's minds. You know,
well, it would.
It's soul destroying.
You wouldn't stop thinking about it. You'd hear a creak in the house, or
well, your house stinks. I mean, essentially, the mice are in the house. You cannot get them out. You cannot do anything
droppings
about
everywhere.
It. You've got to droppings everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, there's health risks. People are getting leptospirosis. There's a risk of salmonella. You know, there's salmonella contamination in some of our grains now. We've got to be very careful about managing those sort of issues. I mean, it's going to have a huge economic impact on the state. Actually, Tom, it's a big issue.
All right, James Jackson, appreciate your time today. Thank you.